Hey, my friend, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Podcasting Podcast. I'm your host, Demetria, and I've been podcasting for over 21 years and coaching podcasters since 2006. And one thing that I've noticed over all those years is that the podcasters who last, the ones who actually build a voice, a community, and a sustainable brand, are always never the ones hustling the hardest. In fact, the podcasters who lean into hustle often crash and burn long before they reach that sweet spot of flow and impact. Well, I hope you enjoyed my last couple of episodes. If you didn't get to catch them, I highly suggest you go back and listen to episode 100, which was my throwback to when I first began podcasting in 2005. I celebrated my audio journey and 100 episodes of this podcast, plus many hundreds more over the past 2 decades. And I take you through an audio journey where you'll get to hear little snippets of my podcasting throughout the years. And it was my first time doing something like that. It's really different, unique, and I thought that I would share that with you in kind of a storytelling form, since I always talk about storytelling on this podcast. So I figured practice what I preach and share a little bit of my story with you. So that is a very, very special episode, and I will link to that in the show notes, episode 100. And I also hope you enjoyed our last interview with Sarah Losi, and that is episode 101. We talked more about podcast storytelling and how we can use it as podcasters to build real connection with our listeners. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And on this episode, it's going to be a really quick one. It's how to get booked as a guest and how to approach it with intention and confidence so that your story lands in the right conversations. This episode is about clarity, alignment, and showing up in a way that works for both you and the host. So first off, we're going to start with a little bit of a shift in our mindset. Like I said, this is a really brief episode. It's one of my short and sweet ones that I like to do on occasion. From time to time, I like to give you just a few practical tips that you can put into action right away. So we're going to get straight into the mindset shift, because getting booked is not about chasing exposure or adding names to a list. That's going to be your fast track to frustration. Instead, what I want you to think about is alignment, showing up where your message actually belongs so that you're not all things to all people and going in 50 different directions. So before you pitch a podcast and you're interested in being on a show, I want you to ask yourself, who is this audience that you're asking to get in front of? Ask yourself if your message genuinely serves that audience, and are you prepared to show up in a way that benefits them and not just you? So I love it when guests approach me for this show and the others that I've had in just a real authentic way. When they've listened to an episode or two, they understand my topic, what my content's about, and they tailor their pitch around the audience that I'm serving. That's preparation, and that kind of preparation and respect for the host shows right away that they're a thoughtful guest. And honestly, that kind of authenticity makes my job as a host so much easier. And then secondly, you want to know your angle as a guest. Like, what are you wanting to achieve? What's the angle of your message? You might have a common theme or a common message that you're sharing on all the podcasts that you're a guest on, but your angle is going to change from show to show. So you're likely not going to show up with the same angle on a podcast show as you would on one about finances. So hosts aren't really booking you per se. And I know that sounds rude, but they're really not booking you. They're booking the conversation that you unlock. That's why it's important to know your guest angle. A clear guest angle is one sentence that answers, why would the host's audience benefit from hearing me? And what will they take away from this episode? So it could be a story that you've lived, a lesson that you've learned, or a perspective that you want to share with this audience, but you want to keep it clear, keep it down to earth, human. And when your pitch is aligned to your host and their audience, the conversation will flow naturally, and the likelihood of getting booked again will skyrocket, as well as getting booked in the first place, because you already know your angle, you already know how your message resonates with their audience. So it's good that you do your research up front. Next, you want to pitch the episode and not yourself. So we're going to talk about pitching because most people pitch themselves and they say, here's who I am. Here's my bio. This is what I do. This is what I'm about. But that by itself won't necessarily get you booked. Now, on occasion, somebody who's really looking to get guest slots filled on their podcast, maybe it's a new podcast and they're just eager to get some people on to get the ball rolling, may not care as much about the messaging as they do maybe about your bio because, I'm pretty sure your bio is really impressive. But when you are talking to podcast hosts that have been around for a little while and they know what angle they want their show to have, they are very usually particular about the kind of guests they bring onto their show. So don't just depend on your bio, what you've done, where you've been, your life story, but think about how you are going to pitch your episode to them. So instead of pitching yourself, pitch the episode. Give your host 2 or 3 concrete topic ideas tailored to their audience and why that matters. A short, friendly introduction is enough. Your personality and clarity will shine through that, but you just need 2 or 3 ideas just to get them rolling so that they know and they can visualize what an episode with you would look like. So I love it when hosts make it easy for me as a guest, just like I try to make the process easy for my guests. So a simple intake form, whether on my website or through tools like Podmatch, which I'm going to talk about in just a second because that is such a great tool for me. It makes booking effortless. So for the past 6 months, I've had a lot of success using Podmatch, and I'm going to leave a link in the show notes for anyone interested in joining either as a guest or a host, but basically they're matching podcast hosts to podcast guests. And if you have been having problems as a host landing credible guests for your show, then Podmatch is probably the place for you. And vice versa, if you're looking to get on shows and you have a message that you want to share, you can very likely get booked using Podmatch. So I'll leave a link in the show notes if you're interested, because I think it really takes the guesswork out of scheduling, out of preparation, all the things. And the tools within Podmatch are just phenomenal. So if you decide to sign up for it, there are training tools, there are resources, you also get paid. So there's the monetization aspect of podcasting through Podmatch. And honestly, it's paid me back over and above what I pay my monthly fee for just for using the system and working the system. So again, check my link in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about agreements and boundaries, because one practical thing I always encourage guests to remember is that it's okay and it's wise to sign a guest agreement or a release form. These agreements protect both parties. They typically cover things like your likeness, your image, your liability, payment expectations, ownership of the work. So read the agreement carefully as a guest before you sign. And if something doesn't feel clear, politely ask the host to clarify. It matters that you can handle this with respect and professionalism. I've had about a 99.9% acceptance rate and approval nods from my guests, but the 1% who were difficult usually wanted to completely change the scope in a way that didn't respect both sides. So fairness is important to me, and I like to ensure that my agreements are already favorable to the guest, but I won't proceed with someone who is argumentative or trying to bend the terms entirely, because I believe that protects everyone. And again, places like Podmatch are great. If you don't want to create your own release form, an agreement or contract, you can do this all through Podmatch, and it helps alleviate some of that as well. I do a combination of both because I've only recently started using Podmatch, so I've been using my own release forms for 2 decades. So just be sure that if you are a podcast guest, that you're respectful of the host. If you are a podcast host, please respect your guest and help them to understand what your terms of agreement are just by a simple form, and make sure that each party is safe in the process of working through your relationship online. And that just goes without saying, because it's not just in podcasting, but everything we do as a solopreneur business owner is a transaction. And it's a business transaction. So we do have to look at the legalities and make sure that we are keeping one another safe and well in the podcasting space also. So the big takeaway is this, that getting booked isn't about hustling everywhere. It's about clarity, alignment, preparation, and mutual respect. So when you show up with intention, when you approach your host thoughtfully, when you honor the process, doors open naturally. So I want to encourage you, go ahead and get booked this year if you're looking to get on podcasts, get on shows, share your message. Do that in 2026. See how it feels for you. I got on a few last year. One of my big goals before the end of the year was to be on about 5, and that's exactly what I did. Getting on podcasts during the summer where I had the time to do that was really good for my soul. I enjoyed the process of learning how other podcasters do things and being on the other end of the stick instead of being the one who's always hosting and asking the interview questions. I'm learning how to be a better guest. And so I encourage you to practice doing that. Believe in your message, trust your voice, and approach podcast guesting with confidence. Show up authentically, do the prep work, respect the agreements, and focus on serving their audience. And that's the kind of guest hosts actually love to invite back. If today's episode helped you see that clarity, alignment, and preparation matter more than hustle, I want to offer you my resource to make this even more actionable. I'm still offering my Launch Confidently podcasting checklist, which walks you through those foundational pieces you need before you press record so you can build from intention instead of overwhelm. I'm also inviting you to download my other resources that I have available at soulpodcasting.com/resources. I have one called the Fearless Podcast Launch Challenge. And this is a step-by-step guide that's designed to help you move from idea to execution. Over this challenge, this is 7 days of tackling foundational elements like podcast planning, branding, setup, and strategy. And this is going to help you to release your podcast within just a week. And that's why it's called a challenge, because you have a limited time to do it. And of course, this is all free. Downloaded at soulpodcasting.com/resources. One more call to action I have for you today is if you are interested in a brief coffee chat with me, we can make that work. It's about a 20-minute coffee chat where we can see if you and I are a good fit for working together on your next podcast project. I do have coaching available, and if we're a good fit, after the coffee chat, we can see how working together on your podcasting would be helpful to you in terms of coaching or your production needs. So that's all on the table for you. I'm putting all the links in the show notes. And if you want to see all of these principles we talked about today in action, check out Podmatch to simplify your guest bookings. And the link is also in the show notes. So thanks for sitting with me today, my friend. Remember that getting booked starts with showing up with intention and preparing thoughtfully, as well as serving your audience. Do that, and you'll not only get booked, you'll make an impact that lasts. I'll see you next time for another thoughtful conversation about podcasting with soul. Happy podcasting.